The first objective of this chapter is to explain the impact of environmental features on messaging. The second objective is to list fixed feature environmental elements that are difficult to change. The third objective is to describe the differences between semi-fixed feature environmental elements. Environmental elements are likely to impact communication that happens within a particular space or environment. Specific features and characteristics from environmental elements provide hints or clues about how one is expected to behave, as well as the likely response. For example, the concept called sociophagal space refers to an environment that makes interaction more difficult and one that minimizes the opportunity for people in that environment to engage one another. In contrast, sociopedal space is an interaction-encouraging environment that provides an opportunity for casual interactions and encourages people to engage with one another. Examples of sociopedal spaces include a casual cafe and a lively cocktail party. Some environmental elements are difficult to change, which are called fixed feature elements. They include architectural style, which is a combination of all fixed feature elements of a space, the use of space in an environment, or what is being accomplished in a particular location, is important as it directly impacts the communication and its manner. In other words, the things accomplished in a particular space can have an influence on how everyone else in that space is likely to behave. For example, when Nohia and his girlfriend had an important but difficult conversation in a local sports stadium, they were interrupted by inebriated hometown fans, influencing their communication pattern. Another consideration is the volume of a space or the three-dimensional size of a space. The volume of a space influences the communication patterns emerging within the space. Similarly, environmental cues tell us how we should behave in each location, such as a movie theater or a coffee shop. Volume is relative to the people occupying that space. The volume of a space changes based on the intent or use. A wedding of 50 people may feel festive and cheery, in a backyard, but not in a large and empty cathedral building. The combination of environment and volume of space have a greater impact on the patterns of verbal and nonverbal communication. For example, the influence of communication patterns of the audience in a nightclub is different when compared to an intimate concert venue with a similar decibel level. The building materials used to construct a space can also create perceptions and influence communication. They can help us to identify space as typical or normal, or as unique or different. Eclectic architectural styles can cause some homes to look a bit out of place, often due to the materials used in the construction. For example, a new glass and steel hotel complex on Hawaii's Oahu Island shores was criticized for its gleamingly sleek modern design, in an area characterized by earth tones and artisanal-looking construction materials. The impact of a building looking out of place is an important consideration because people may come up with various expectations about a space based upon the building materials. They may have different perceptions about those who live or work in that space and about their communication pattern, especially if the communication environment is constructed to be exceptional in a way for good or bad. What might be the intentional message in selecting building material? The way that specific materials in a space look may foster an attitude toward what happens in that space. Perceptions are influenced by the feelings evoked throughout the surfaces that humans touch or feel. A carpeted sunken living room around a natural stone fireplace allows for more lounging around and casual conversation at a ski lodge than a polished concrete floor with some nearby steel walls. Leading lines are any lines in any space that people find themselves. The bold sweeping patterns on walls and curves around the patrons in a cafe may indicate that the sociability of the space has been heightened. For a linear perspective of a space, have an interior design that utilizes broad sweeping curves that move throughout the room at the eye level of both seated and standing people who find themselves in that space. Interior designs using lines can create a feeling of power or authority, particularly if linear perspective makes people look at one individual in particular. An example would be the figure shown on this slide. We have so far considered fixed feature elements. We shall now turn our attention to semi-fixed feature elements, which are environmental elements that can be swapped out at a whim, or with just a couple of hours worth of work. Artifacts placed around a person in a physical environment can help send messages about the person. The person can select these artifacts with an intent to send meaning. The person can also convey meaning without selecting the artifacts. For example, Sherry has a hook with various aprons that she uses for baking and gardening. It makes people think of it as a collection of intentional decoration, thereby making a meaning. However, people may also select artifacts for their function or form, or both. That means that artifacts are sometimes not intended to be a message. Regardless, The selection and arrangement of artifacts in an environment are often intentionally communicative, even if the person managing that environment does not intend to convey a message with those artifacts. For example, Esteban, a bicycle lover, hung bicycles and many bicycle parts in his room with the most ease and utility of space. Kristen viewed such an arrangement as a hipster monument to Esteban's favorite form of travel. After creating a space and filling it with artifacts, it needs to be fleshed out with additional elements that bring mood features. Utilizing or varying the light and color used within a space are ways to impact the mood. The mood or emotion created by the lighting in a space is relative to the natural lighting. For example, bright lighting is needed in a neighborhood coffee house than in a cozy romantic cafe in the same neighborhood. The quantity of artificial light required in a space to perform the tasks or communicative functions may be influenced by the relative lighting to natural daylight or nightlight in an environment. For example, people in a daytime workplace require an average amount of daylight, in spite of a building and a roof in the way. When the natural lighting amount exceeds by 5%, they will feel the space is cheerful, and if it's 2% less than daylight, they will turn on additional lighting to get their work done. A calming cool color of the environment can contribute to the mood. Irrespective of the colors or sources of illuminations used in the surfaces of a room, colors have a larger contribution to people's perceptions about the physical environment and the relationships among them in that environment. Colors used in a particular environment can also imply attachment to the cultural meaning, which helps people match their mood to the communicated mood of a room. For example, red is associated with passionate emotions and strong feelings such as lust, anger, or defiance. Red is also associated with blood, rage, or sex. Orange is associated with harvest times of fall. Orange invokes feelings of change or excitement based upon a particular hue. Yellow is cheerful and it catches attention. It is used as a color for both caution or for gaining someone's attention in a required situation. Green is cool and relaxing. It is often associated with nature and the environment, as well as money. Blue is also cool and relaxing. It can help us to focus on calmness and serenity. Purple is the color of royalty and wealth, but it can also be associated with sadness or the end of life. Brown is generally a calm, quiet, or melancholy mood. However, brown is also the color of dirt that often reminds people of both decay and change. Black is associated with intense or strong emotions, fear, or anxiousness. It can even be referenced to a variety of evil characteristics, as a cover of darkness. White is associated with intense, purity, and innocence. It can render a feeling of cleanliness or sterility. Environmental noise inhibits communication by making people pay too much attention to their discomfort and not enough attention to their social interactions. When the environmental noise is too high or too low, it is oppressive to thought and interaction. For example, loud noise in a room and loud clinking of forks on glasses at a wedding reception can be distracting. The environmental sound produced by one's own voice is an important environmental feature that shapes or constrains communication. Environmental noise can be pleasant or unpleasant and can impede or facilitate interactions. For example, loud background noise prevents people from hearing one another. Ambient noise refers to barely noticeable background noise that adds energy or slightly perceptible sound to an environment. Temperature refers to the hotness or coldness in a location, whereas room temperature is a general range in which the temperature is considered to be optimal. If the heat is not maintained at the correct level, it may result in devastating effects on social interactions. For example, a hot and humid room may result in lethargy and sleepiness, and a cold room may force people to find refuge beneath blankets, hoodies, and scarves. In both cases, people are distracted from successfully communicating messages. Overall, we have learned from this chapter that the environment can affect communication. The artifacts or things that we put in a room not only create meaning in relation to their space but also influence how people may communicate with one another. Environmental noise can also facilitate or hinder communication. Thus, it is important that we consider how fixed feature and semi-fixed feature environmental elements affect verbal and nonverbal messages.